to dream being real right now, now. If it wasn't working, I'ma work it out, yeah. I keep on going till the lights go down, yeah. Till the lights go. Everybody wanna make millions, but not everybody been working. Everybody know they got brilliance, but not everybody been searching. Everybody rap about money and hoes, but they got neither. Everybody knows, always been keeping it real. Every time that I spit in the flow, I've been going to get it, they not gon' forget it. I've been going up, they been staying afloat. My music been personal, telling my stories. I'm telling the truth and my life been exposed. Talking to fans and we in it together. I'm never gon' turn even under the pressure. I'm keeping it true to myself. Don't matter to me if the curtains are open or closed. Everything I wanted, I got it. Always wanted more, so I'll never be stopping. Everyone asking when a new drop. Pressure been building, but it's a good problem. Graduated college and now I got options. Always bringing more, all these rappers take caution. Always been bossing, everybody watching. Love every fan, just know you're not forgotten, no. Everything I used to dream being real right now, now. If it wasn't working, I'ma work it out, yeah. I keep on going till the lights go down, yeah. Till the lights go down, down. Till the lights go down, down. I've been feeling alright.
I'm Newman, and welcome to episode number 7 of Welcome to the Machine. And I'm really excited about tonight's guest. We've been talking about this guy for a week, seems like weeks, and everybody on the team's been really excited. Serial entrepreneur, founded over 50 different companies, a real estate titan, one of the really big wigs in the real estate industry, author, speaker, an adventure junkie, and husband, father, and just all around cool guy, David Osborn. Hey, David, how you doing tonight?
John, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here on Newmanite Nation.
I love that. David, your book, your latest book, Wealth Can't Wait. I read the book, phenomenal book. Everyone should read this book. My kids are going to read this book. And I was listening to some other podcasts that you've done, and one of the things that you said was that I believe it was your dad in 2006 was diagnosed with cancer, and that was part of the impetus to write this book?
Yeah, he got cancer in 06, and he was a strong, athletic, worked out a lot, Green Beret kind of guy, and the cancer ate him up over 3 years. And as I stood beside him, every day I would go over just about and just sit beside him on the couch and put my arm around him. And, as time went by and the chemo drugs were kind of hammering him a little bit, he was less present. But I kept thinking to myself, my dad had a lot of great stories, and he's not going to be around anymore. He's not going to light up the room like he used to. What happened if something happened to me? I got young kids. What would I have left behind? And that was kind of the impetus of maybe I should write a book. And so I just got started from that perspective of what could I leave behind for my kids? Maybe not funny stories, but just a little bit. I mean, that book really is me and my journey. It's what I've learned and how I built my success. So that's where it started from. And that was, it seems like I've been working on the book for like 9 years. I keep saying 7 years, but I actually think it might have even been longer. It was much, much harder to do than I thought it would be, John, but I'm really proud of it. I'm glad it's complete. It's not perfect, but if I'd kept editing it, it would have never gotten out. We probably did 12 rewrites, and I'm super pleased with the outcome. I think the mission is accomplished. If I got hit by a bus tomorrow, God forbid, and my 6-month-old boy wanted to know a little bit about his dad when he was older, he could pick that book up. And if he followed some of that wisdom, I think he'd kind of understand the train tracks that I was on.
And it's first off, I'm sorry to hear about that. And I did not know that until I started doing some research this week. Interesting.
Long time ago, 7 years now.
It's interesting that my mother passed away last October of cancer.
I'm sorry, man. It's tough.
Her passing was the impetus to me start doing this podcast.
Wow.
So it's kind of interesting. And the journey towards fulfillment, which is really what this podcast is about, stemmed from my mother followed the traditional model. You talk in the book about programming. She was programmed to believe that you follow this seasonal pattern of life. You go to school, you get a job, one day you'll retire. and 64 years old, she was died. Now she hated her job. I mean, she did not like what she did. Her true passion was in creating things. She was an artist, and she was not very happy while she was working. But then after she was diagnosed with cancer, she was happy. And I asked her about that, and she said, I realized that I had to start dying before I could start living.
Wow.
And
that's profound.
And I think you talk about things like that. This book is Wealth Can't Wait, but when you define wealth, part of this book is, in the first chapter, you mentioned one day you wake up and you make a decision. Are you going back into the matrix? Are you really going to decide what your life looks like?
Right.
And I'm not sure if my mom ever did that.
Well, she might have, it sounds like, at the end. I mean, sometimes it's sad that we're sleepwalking through our lives and something really radical has to happen for us to grab a hold of, who it is we are and what we truly want. And when you hear about people that hate their jobs and just grind away at it, on the one hand, I respect them. I admire the fact that they're usually trying to provide for their families and provide for their kids. But at the same time, there's another part of me that's like, your kids probably won't starve. And they might be inspired by seeing you live the life you truly choose. But I understand it's hard. I mean, it just so happens that a lot of my interests aligned with making money, right? So I do what I love and I make money. When they see a starving artist or people jumping out to be authors, I met a ton of authors while I was writing this book, and man, it's a grind with no money. So you really have to love it. But I do admire people that just go to work even though they hate their job to provide for their families. And I also think that's kind of an interesting kind of insanity too, isn't it? To choose that, to get caught into that program and not really choose what fulfills us the most in life, because we do die and we think our lives are like that we're here and our lives move like this together, but this is the end of your life and this is you and you're moving towards it constantly. And this other end doesn't move. And I think it took my dad dying for me to really realize that end doesn't move. And, if you look at it, I'm in my late 40s and I'm about to be 50 in not too long. And I'm pretty sure when I'm 60, I won't be physically more fit than I am at 40 in my 40s. And in my 30s, I was more physically fit than I am. I'm fit. I work out a lot. I look after myself. But the trend is, it's like this. Slowly it peaks and it comes down. So once you're aware of that, you don't want to waste those middle years. Even me, I don't want to waste my 10 years in my 50s, and then I probably can do more in my 50s than I can in my 60s, and I can do more in my 60s than my 70s. So you just kind of want to be aware of that as often as possible. One of the things I try to do is remind myself of that. I used to have a whiteboard in my garage that said "Think Eternal," and I left that there. I just wrote it one day. I think I was dealing with some problem, and I was like, "You're just thinking way too small. You need to think bigger." So I was like, well, I'll think, will this matter in 100 years? And I thought, screw it, I'll just write "Think Eternal" on here. And I left it there for like 2 years. Like every time I drive in my car, I'd see "Think Eternal." And I was thinking in terms of infinity, like what's really going to matter in 1,000 years? And are you doing the things right now to take advantage of this gift of life you have that make a difference for you and your family and the people you're around versus, just doing your duty or what you think you ought to do? I mean, I think mastery does require you do some things that are repetitive and boring, but at the same time, if you're discontented with your life and doing something you don't love, especially when you're young, go find something else, do something different. If it's just the grind that you need to get through to get better, then stick with it by all means. But if you want to be an author, go write. If you want to be a painter, go paint. I'd much prefer the rock and roll guy that tried to make it, never did, but at least gave it a shot, like in their 20s. And the guy was like, I should have tried, but I just went straight into business and now I have a job I hate. So just go for it. Go for what you love. I think it gets easier as you get older. And if you think eternal, it makes it easier as well.
I mean, Dave, one of the things I loved about the book was it was a very, very easy read. My kids are 12, and I really do believe that my kids will understand some of those principles.
Is that good right there?
That's perfect, David. That is perfect. And we're going to be giving away some autographed copies at the end of this show. So, we had a contest. We're going to do another one. So if anyone that's watching this shares this feed to their Facebook page, they will be entered into a contest to win an autographed copy of this book. So we have 10 of those available. Go out and share this feed, because this is invaluable information that David's going to give us. And Dave, I appreciate you taking your time out to do this, because I know you're a busy guy.
Well, of course, John. I mean, I'm new to being an author. We hit number 5 Wall Street Journal, so that's cool. We're best-selling authors now, I guess, or my team and I and my co-author. But at the end of the day, it's all about providing value to other people. And it's cool. You said the book was written, where young people could understand it. And I do think it could be very valuable to younger people. I hate overly complex books personally, so I don't want to read something that makes my head hurt. I wasn't a great student. I wasn't a guy that wanted, to study stuff. I like books that I can read flying from New York to LA. Like if I can read a book in 5 hours, get something of value on it and move on, that's what I like to do. In fact, I almost think we packed too much in the book. We should have probably cut it in half. But it's a good book. And I think for young people especially, it's really what has made me successful, and Paul, my co-author, and all the little lessons we've had. There's as much about how you think and how you take action as there is about specifics on, stock market. It's not like Tony Robbins' book, Money, which is a great book. Mm-hmm. We're not discussing stock markets and SEPs and 401ks. We're really talking about the foundation of being wealthy. Without this foundation, it doesn't really matter what you do. I don't think you'll be able to achieve wealth.
And Dave, you mentioned that you weren't great at school, and I heard you say that somewhere else. What was it about the education? Was it just that because you love to learn? I mean, I know that, but I wasn't great at school either.
I just don't think it was set up right for kids like us, probably. I mean, I often had this fantasy, and I'm in a great school with my kids now. I'm really happy with it, but I had this fantasy of starting a kid for hyperactive kids and just challenge them more, move things along faster, keep it very infotainment based. I think sitting in a classroom for 6 hours is just brain deading for some people. I think some people that are detail oriented and eat that stuff up, there are definitely people who are great academically, and they probably go on to be professors and doctors and a lot of very smart people. But a lot of us just seem to have this juice in us that doesn't do well sitting at a desk. And that was really my problem. And then feeling disrespected, feeling like the teachers were hypocrites, that didn't fit well with me either. So I would smart off a little bit. I was a bit of a rebel without a clue. I'm not really that proud of that in hindsight, but that's how I was. So, that first off, you're forced to sit there, and then some kids will just deal with that. And I had a hard time dealing with it. I would rebel against it. So I would kind of want to walk around or just start banging my desk or doing weird stuff like that. And that's disruptive. And having taught a lot of classes, I get it. I mean, there's somebody answers the phone in the front row and starts doing a deal. You're like, really? That's not easy for me right now. I am working. And I'm sure the teachers felt the same way. And I don't blame them for getting upset, but I also don't think the system served someone like me. And my kid's in this school that's very entrepreneurial. They call it, it's not a desk school. That's really the definition. So they don't sit, they learn through the day, they self-pace, they self-study, and they do a lot of the stuff on the computer. And then their teachers help them as they get stuck with stuff. And they do business projects every year. They create a business plan on a frequent basis. And I think it's much more in harmony with what I think a human being actually is. And I think the school system of old doesn't meet the requirements of many of us who are like you and I, obviously, we're kind of hyperactive.
Yeah, and I had the same problem, a troublemaker. I didn't have a lot of friends because I was always the crazy, weird one. And that led me to some self-destructive behavior because I was looking for a tribe that would accept me. And then one day I made a change. I made a decision, and you talk about this in the book. I made a decision to improve my life. And it was much like you through self-improvement. I dived into, actually stole my mom's credit card and bought Personal Power late. I'm not proud of this. My mom's passed now, but
we should be proud of that you bought Personal Power, not necessarily how you bought it.
Yes. It was a life-changing, it's 12 o'clock at night infomercial, and I hear Tony come on the TV, and I'm like, I want that life.
Right.
And that started me on the journey towards personal development.
Yeah. I would say the same thing for me. So when I became addicted to learning was when I got into business. I got into, I had a lawn mowing company, but I got into Keller Williams and quite early when Keller Williams was quite small. And I began to learn that, like, even a script, if I learn a new script, the clients look at me slightly different. So when I'm just winging it all the time and using charm and maybe a little bit of communicative skills, that's one thing, and it worked to a point. But when I had a script and I used that, then it worked better, right? You're showing a client around and they can't remember 10 houses. So you look, all I want you to remember is your favorite house and your second favorite house. That's like a good script, and it's smart and it helps people and it serves people. And so then you take that a step further and you open a franchise and you learn a script of how to build a business, lead with revenue, control expenses, hire talent. And you start learning all these things that when you apply them actually make a massive difference in your life. As an example now, because I'm getting older, I guess, a lot of learning on health, like learning, to eat much more vegetables than meat. We eat too much meat in society. I'm 10 pounds lighter than I was 10 years ago, and I'm in better shape, other than the fact that I'm late 40s versus late 30s. I don't have the timeline on my side, but you learn that script, you apply it, I used to work out by lifting as much as I can. Now I don't at all. I just try to stay lean. I do higher reps, lower weights. I concentrate on my form. I don't swing my body to get an extra rep in so that I can keep not harming my back, no pressure on my back. So all these things are scripts, and you apply them to your life and you almost immediately get results. And then that's when I became addicted to learning. I'm like, wow, it's almost all been figured out. If you just learn from the smart people that have figured it out, who actually they learned from the smart people before them that figured it out, your life can be amazing. And once I got that, of course, understanding that being amazing doesn't mean like that, right? It means it's a commitment in the journey, and it gets better and better and better and better. And my 30s were way better than my 20s. Because of you, I had some behavioral issues. I created my own drama. I created some negative situations for myself. I had to work through that. And then my 40s have been better than my 30s, even though I love my 30s, and I'm anticipating my 50s will be better than my 40s. I mean, life just keeps getting better if you keep learning new stuff. Like now I'm a husband, right? So I'm learning how to be a better husband, and I'm a dad again. And I can tell you the first time around, I wasn't that great. I was a bit absent. And the second time around with my two kids now, I'm working hard at being a better dad. And I can't wait to learn the script that will help me in the relationship and in my health and being a dad. And that's why now I'm addicted to learning. And I still read 25 to 35 books a year. I listen to podcasts. I do a lot of audiobooks. There's a lot of sources of information.
And so basically what you're saying is you're a student of life, not just of business, but a student of life. And have you found a pattern that works? I think you laid out in the book, actually. And whether it's business or it's relationships or it's health, is there the same pattern that exists, David?
I mean, the same pattern is to be learning based, right? The same pattern is to learn from the smartest guys that have done it before, that are committed and passionate about that. So you might say that I'm a passionate student of life. So my book is really a reflection of the lessons I've picked up by being such a passionate student of life. And so, reading my book, you're not going to hear, I don't really invent anything in the book. I might have put it together in a slightly different way for you to have a new perspective. And there might be things that I emphasize that other teachers and speakers haven't emphasized. But ultimately, it's the same as, reading Think and Grow Rich, reading As a Man Thinketh, reading Cash Flow Quadrant. You can pull these pieces out of the book, out of life. And so the pattern is simply to find the masters or the people that have done very, very well, read what they've done, and then shortcut it and take action. I think the second piece is people make it overwhelming. They make it overly complicated, and then that shuts them down on the ability to take action. And action means, do one thing a quarter to change your life. Quit trying to do 30 things because you went to a seminar and you were taught 30 things. Just do one thing in a quarter. And that's I think the secret is follow the masters and then implement at least one thing a quarter.
Yeah, and in the book, David, you even spoke about it. It seemed like you've had, in one way or another, mentors. You talked about Uncle Ted. I think it was a great Uncle Ted. And then Gary Keller. And now you have another tribe, a whole entire tribe with GoBundance. How important were those individuals at each point in your life?
Well, mentors are massively important, and peers, I think, are even more important. So your mentors are important because they'll teach you the lessons personally. Obviously, Uncle Ted was my family. On my mom's side, we were kind of the poor offshoot of a fairly wealthy family, right? So my mom's mom was broke, dead broke, and mom grew up poor. But if you went back one generation before that, there was some success. So great Uncle Ted was the more successful branch of that original family. And early on, I just being around him, the way he lived, the dignity he lived with, the way he approached life. He was kind of the patriarch of our family early on. And so you pick up energy from that. And that's a blessing that some people don't even have. Like some people just never get exposed to that. But I got to see Uncle Ted having big family dinners at Christmas and having 20, 30 people there and, making his speech. And, so I got to learn a lot of things through him. And that was more experiential when I was in my 10, 11, 12 phase. He did give me some jobs, which was cool. And there was a lot there. And then getting into Keller Williams, meeting Gary Keller early was obviously a fabulous gift and a blessing. Because I was at that time 26 and I guess Gary was 36. The company was very small. So there was a lot of one-on-one time and there was a lot of 20 people in a classroom, Gary Keller teaching it. Wow. And not really probably at the time appreciating how valuable that opportunity was. But if you know Gary Keller, he's dedicated to studying life. He's dedicated to winning at a high level. And he constantly learns and applies what he learns. So being around that not only set the standard of how to approach business and life, but also accelerated my own personal growth because he was growing so fast. You get caught into this growth vortex. And I think that's what we've created at Go Abundance. And that's what I think kind of happens in a smaller way around me. Like and that's why your peers are so important. So if your peers aren't committed to growth, if they rather go play, for instance, only play, because playing is important too, but only play, then you get caught into this sort of semi-dysfunctional vortex because you can't break through your peer group, right? You have to either leave them behind and get with the one that's growing or get everyone to grow along with you. And then the mentors and the teachers, they show up to give you the way. But if your tribe isn't going with you, then, it's much harder. It's not impossible. People do it. There are pioneers that show up and just against all the odds, they make stuff happen. And if you choose to do it and you go after it hard, you'll find people will show up in your life that are more like you. So you'll attract a new peer group. But it's really hard to keep if your two best friends from high school, one's a bartender, one's a ski bum, and you hang out with them all the time, it's really hard to go on to be anything different from that kind of a vibe, right? That kind of ski bum bartender vibe. And those people have a lot of fun. So I got nothing against ski bums or bartenders. I think it's a wonderful way to make a life. It's playful, but it's not constructively building your life to future. And I am inspired, my choice is to keep building things into the future. And that's what fulfills me. So that's the path I'm on. So I need to have people around me that do the same thing. And so in Go Abundance, we attracted a bunch of people that are choosing that. And then I'm in a group called Tiger 21, which is a group of high net worth individuals as well. And even in those groups, I constantly look up to, I spent some time with Sam Zell, Mayor Bloomberg, put my arm around Mayor Bloomberg. It's the closest I've ever been to $60 billion. It was pretty cool.
Wow.
And, so you're just constantly looking up and trying to find people to learn from.
Now, what is it like to just have a conversation? I think there's a common misconception. I mean, you look like an average guy. I mean, you just look like a cool guy. I think there's this common misconception that ultra wealthy people somehow are different. Are they different, David?
They're not different. They're just very purposeful. I would say that the biggest difference is how purposeful, highly successful people are. And so, again, that's learned. It's not like there's no baby that's born purposeful. There's not a single child that's born purposeful other than eating and pooping, because I have one. But the people that have achieved a certain level in life, they've just gotten down what I talked about. They learn something, they apply it, they get good at it, they reapply it, and they just do it over and over again. And that's really, I think, the primary difference. They're regular people. They're caring people in my experience. They're usually up to some good in the world as well as making money. But they don't mess around. So you don't win your way into the life of a purposeful person by being aimless and non-self-directed, if that makes sense. That's really the primary difference.
So that can come across, I think, sometimes as almost being selfish and or egotistical.
Cold, arrogant. Yeah. There's a lot of things,
Yeah, but to a certain degree, we have to be selfish out of concern for what makes me happy and what makes me fulfilled.
It's almost self-preservation, because if you start achieving more and more in life, more and more people tend to want something from you. Mm-hmm. And you've got to, you've got one you. So you got to manage your energy in how you approach your life. And a lot of times that means kind of keeping some people at arm's length, which is why I'm sure movie stars and sports stars, some of them get a really bad rap for being jerks. but they just gotta try to protect their energy. Some are probably super social, so they look better at it. But yeah, my experience of highly successful people is they don't really want to waste time, because time's their most valuable asset. It's the only thing they can't get back. And so if you're intruding on their time, you better darn well bring value or bring something that gets their attention, or they might just brush you off because they've learned not to do the civilly nice thing, which a lot of people do, and waste their life trying to make you happy. So yes, they come across as cold, that comes across as arrogant, but I understand it completely. I mean, I try not to be cold and arrogant, but I certainly am very protective of my space, and I try to not have my life energy sucked out of me by people that might otherwise choose to do that. But what I do try to do is try to help everybody that comes across my path that's trying to achieve in life. And if you're up to something and you're trying hard, I try to give as much time as I feel like I can spare.
Was that something that was always in you, David? The almost self-preservation side?
Man, you're asking deep questions. I think when I first got going, I was insecure and nervous a lot more than I am now. And I think I threw everything out there as much as I could, and I pushed really hard. And I think I almost had a nervous breakdown from that. I got shingles and I got stressed out from it. And so coming through that to the other side of that in my early 30s, when I kind of went through that breakdown, I came back from the other side learning I have to be more protective of my energy. I just can't get it go all out for everything at all times. And so that developed over time. And yes, I've become more and more protective of it now. My energy and my time is very important to me. I want to spend my time with my family or making stuff happen. And that's yeah, it's become more and more so because I don't have that abundant personality. I don't talk to 1,000 people. One of my good friends is Hal Elrod. Hal will spend all day with everybody. He's amazing at it. He never seems to run out of energy, and he feeds off of it. He must be an extreme extrovert, I guess. Tony Robbins, I think, is the same way, by the way. But I am not an extreme extrovert, but nor am I an introvert. I'm kind of right on the line on the Myers-Briggs. So I've got a certain amount. If I use it up, then I'm no good to anybody, at least of all myself. So yeah, over time, I've learned to protect myself. And by the way, on the way up, if you're coming up, you need to protect yourself so you have the time to focus on your plan and your goal. And if instead of focusing on, let's say you've chosen a path and you're getting distracted by your buddy that wants to go to the bar, your buddy that wants to go watch football or maybe play soccer, whatever it is, that's fine if you're managing it within your time parameters, your time blocking. But if it's just pulling you out of anything to do with your focus, you'll never get to where you want to go. So you're going to have to be disciplined and saying, no, I won't go to the bar with you, but yes, I will go work out with you. That's my time for you. If that's not acceptable to you, then I'm sorry. Maybe I need to find somebody who wants to work out with me, because that gives me energy that I can then use for the rest of the day. Whereas when I go to the bar, it's fun and I enjoy it, but the next morning I'm a little groggy. I don't get as much done. So I only have one night a week maybe to go to the bar, which is Saturday. Like today, I'm as boring as can be. I'd rather be in bed by 10 o'clock if I can. When I was younger, I tried to do more of that, going to the bars and stuff. But I began to notice the cost it had on me in terms of my overall life, and it just wasn't worth it. Being in a loud bar with my ears ringing and feeling cool and whatever is just not enough of a payoff for the price I pay and loss of energy toward my purpose in life. So yeah, I've learned to marshal and manage my life within the parameters that I choose.
In the book Wealth Can't Wait, and the interesting thing, you said it, David, there's not a lot of investment advice in there. So when you talk about wealth, what does that mean to you, David?
So wealth to me, wealth actually comes from the Middle Ages. And in the Middle Ages, they used to say, "Welly be with you." So that would be like a greeting, like, "Hey, what's up?" Like we would say today. So "Welly be with you" worked into the word wealth, and it's very close to the word health. And wealth back then meant prosperity, abundance, like a good family, you're eating well, your life being blessed. And to me, that's the meaning of wealth. It's not money. There's a lot of miserable rich people. I think, Tony Robbins said in his book Money that he met a lot of billionaires and a lot of them are miserable. Right. But there is a wealthy component to life that gives you everything. To me, it's abundance ultimately. And so I think one of the best things you can do to build wealth is work out. That's what Richard Branson said. He was asked, what's the best thing you can do to improve your health, your wealth, your financial situation? He says, work out every day. So I think one of the things you can do is be a responsible human being, a responsible father, a responsible husband. So all of these things I think tie together and build your wealth world, if that makes any sense. So wealth to me means fulfillment and abundance.
Yeah, and you use the term money along with energy in the book.
Yeah.
And can you just define that or explain that really quickly?
Sure. Money is ultimately just energy, right? Money has no intrinsic value. If you were washed up on a deserted island, the last thing you would want is $100 million worth of cash. It would do absolutely nothing for you. Money is simply, from my perspective, a store of value, which is a store of energy. With money, you can get a better diet. With money, you can go on a better vacation. With money, you can hire smarter, better people. With money, you can take more risks without fear of loss. So money really is a store of energy or a store of potential in the universe. And so once you get that, money is not really something to be hoarded. It's something to be used effectively, like a tool. So from my perspective, money is a store of energy. And when you have a lot of it, your objective is to keep it flowing and keep it moving. So I built a world where I have, a chef and a gardener and an incredible team of people that I work with. And, I never hold back on trying to keep that money flowing out as well as in, like it's a big circle. And I think the faster and better you get managing that in and out circle, the further you'll go. Now, I'm not talking about spending money on like a new fast car every month, although some people do that, or spending money on new clothes every month. I'm talking about efficiently using my capital to accelerate and expand my life. If I fix my own car, I'm wasting a lot of time. I'm incompetent at it, and I'm trying to save $90. Mm-hmm. If instead I go get my oil changed by some guy for $90, he's got a job, he's getting paid, and I'm able to spend that time doing what I do best, which is building businesses, making money, et cetera, et cetera. And I approach that with everything. It's all about delegating everything. So don't ask me to come to your house and clean your pool or screw a screw in or anything like that. I don't do it. I'll make a phone call and I'll get somebody to do it. So to me, that's what money is. It's really energy. And the better you manage your energy, so the better shape you're in, the more you love your family, which gives you energy, the more you love the car you drive, the more you love the way you approach your life, all of that gives you energy. And the more energy you personally have, the more money you're going to have. That's just inevitable. So that's to me, that's why I'm so protective of my space, my health, my diet, what I read, what I put into my space, and who I hang out with, because it all reflects as energy in my life, and that reflects ultimately as money.
And that comes back to, I think, some degree of programming. We have this computer in our head here, and we literally have the ability to reprogram our mind, but so few people do that.
We don't just have the capability. I think we have the obligation to program our mind, because if you want a great life, you have to deprogram what doesn't work. Every one of us got a program that works or doesn't work to some level. And we have to deprogram what doesn't work and reprogram what does work. And so if you want a great life, I think that's an obligation. Now, you may have a wiring that enables you to be successful just of who you are and how you got programmed. But many times that wiring, I think that's why Tony Robbins said there are some billionaires that are miserable people. They had a money-making wiring that just chunka like Pac-Man. Suddenly they got $1 billion, but they're just miserable, awful people. And they haven't deprogrammed the part that isn't serving them so they can have a more fulfilled life. So ultimately, I think, we have an obligation. And to me, I call it reworking the pipes. I honestly think every single thing that happens to you, you have an opportunity to rework your pipes. And if you get your pipes right, life becomes easy, you get into flow, and you start living from a place of massive abundance. It's a bit of a deep concept, but ultimately everything you look at, you've got to say, what impact did I have on that? Why did that occur that way? What did I do to create that situation? What worked, what didn't? What would I like to duplicate and have more of? What would I like to have less of? And then approach your life that way. And I'll give you an example. Like, I'm married, and marriage has been tough for me because I'm so driven, and my wife's more relaxed and just likes to live life.
Now, how do you deal with that? Because I have the same.
A lot of people do, a lot of successful people do. So what I used to try to do was use my corrective driven self in the relationship. What I found is that's totally ineffective. It doesn't work at all. What works is loving Tracy, giving her space, accepting her for who she is, and really not trying to impose my way on her at all. And once I got that, and it took me a while, once I reworked my pipes and I programmed them correctly, to this day, criticism does not work. Criticism will not help your relationship. It's not going to take things to a new level. So I'm just very careful about never criticizing Tracy. And by the way, our relationship's better now than it's been, in years, because of that, lack of criticism. Instead of saying, I don't think the house is, organized like I'd like it to be. My question would be, what could we do to improve our overall life happiness? And I just have a dialogue with her. And I don't get into the criticism of any specific things, because really, if I don't like something, that's my problem. It's not her problem.
So
that's an example of rewiring my pipes that's taken the volatility in our house way down while keeping us close.
Yeah, I have a no filter. So what comes into my head comes out of my mouth usually. And I had one of those situations this weekend, and I know my wife is watching this, where I blew up over I think it was some laundry. And I'm consciously working on that. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying to become the best husband that I can be. And the same as a father.
There's a great book on that called Leadership and the Art of Self-Deception, I think it's called. It's a great book. And it talks about every time you criticize somebody, you fall into a box. And all you see in that box is further criticism. So you don't do this, or you don't do that, you don't do that. You get evidence to manifest that supports whatever your criticism is. And instead, if you ask, what would you like? Like for instance, let's say you want the laundry done. Well, either do it yourself, because obviously to your wife, it's not that important.
It's not going to happen.
Or hire somebody to come to your house. You can usually get somebody for
I've tried that.
$50 an hour and have them come in and do it. That's really your two options. But criticism won't get you there.
Now, everybody wants to know, you have a jet, you have a great life, you travel all over the world. I think you play tennis with Richard Branson. Everyone wants to know what the secret is to building wealth and to building a life like this. And the first thing I'd say is go buy his book. But for anybody that's watching, is there a secret? Is there really like a secret to all of this?
It's what we've talked about already, John. It's in my opinion, it's being committed to the path of self-awareness and personal growth. That's all you can do. You can do your part. There's a certain amount of luck that happens in life. Like I was lucky. I got to the Keller Williams early on. There's 250, maybe 500 people. I don't really know, but now there's 160,000, right? But I'll tell you, the first 5,000 had the same opportunity I had, and only probably 10 of them took it. So why did the other 4,990 not? And I don't know, but I can tell you what you can do is fully participate in your journey towards wealth building, which means being the best you can be. And if you show up every day with that level of transparency and authenticity, I think that served me the most of anything in my life, which means I'm looking at myself going, is this working? Am I legit? And some people I meet, they're so lost in their own BS, man. They make stuff up as if it's real and it's not real. Yeah. So I don't know, as an example, like I'm into no illusions that my book is going to become the next War and Peace. Like I worked very hard at it. It's a bestseller because of how hard I worked at it. And I'm pretty sure next year I'll be selling a few hundred copies a year, maybe. I'm not under any illusions on it. I wouldn't talk to you and say, my book is going to be the next Think and Grow Rich. Maybe it will catch fire, but that would be pure luck. But what I do know is that I'm looking at that every day in all my life. I don't look at a business and go, everything I touch turns to gold. All I can say is I've had a certain amount of success so far, and that could all change tomorrow. I mean, you just got to be as realistic, as transparent, as authentic as you can, and then commit to self-growth, to self-mastery by reading the books, being on the podcast, listening and learning. And if you do that, I guarantee you your life will be more amazing in 10 years than it is today. It'll be more amazing in 20 years than it is today. But if you think there's some kind of like secret magical pixie dust you spread on stuff, I haven't found it yet, and I've been looking hard, probably harder than almost anybody. Most people, 99% out of people, I've been looking hard. There is no pixie dust other than authenticity, hard work, and really having a plan for your life and following that plan, and then picking up nuggets, and applying those nuggets. Action based on wisdom ultimately leads to victory.
A very wealthy person one time told me there are no shortcuts to success. If it happens overnight or if it happens too quickly, it'll probably get taken away from you. I know you're a big Jim Rohn fan, and I think it was, and I may not have the exact quote, but I think he said, become a millionaire, not for the money, but for the habits that you pick up and for what you learn along the way.
Yeah, the benefit of the life of success is not what you get, it's who you become on the journey. And, like I'm surrounded by amazing people, and I'm very lucky to be connected to multiple charities, and around, a guy that sold his company for hundreds of millions and gave half of it to charity, a guy that's trying to take all the homeless people off the streets of Austin, a guy that's totally, it was just in Fast Company magazine from Charity Water that's committed to bringing clean water to the world. He's done 7 million people so far. All of this occurs because of who I've become on my journey to self-mastery. And it's who you become really where all the joy is. I mean, that's all the fun. Like, you can take away everything and I think I'd still do pretty good because of that commitment to self-mastery, but please don't take it all away from me. I'm not asking for that. And then the other thing you have to realize too is that that transparency applies in all areas. You got to look yourself in the eye and in the mirror and say, is this working? Like, I'm spending $5,000 a month and I'm earning $4,000 a month. How long can I keep doing that? Like, I'm saving no money. I'm not building anything that has yield. I meet so many people that make $1 million, but they spend $1,100,000. And that's irrelevant, but they walk around, they get awards in our industry. There's like all this crazy stuff that occurs and it's fraudulent, you know, and it's okay. It's amazing that you could earn $1 million, but if you're spending $1,001, you may as well not do anything and just go get food stamps. So that's where that's where you need that transparency to look at what you're, and then there are other people that are starting out and they're maybe getting into the business, but they're not making any phone calls, right? So maybe you have to prospect for a living and they're not making any calls. Where you can tell all your friends you're a real estate guy and whatever you want to do, but you're living fraudulent until you start making those calls and getting better at it. So that's what I mean. It's just try to be, I call it a life audit, and we put a lot of tools for a life audit in the book. And I do regular life audits on an annual basis where I sit down and see what's working and what's not working with my peers. And that's the level of radical authenticity that I think you need to have a truly blessed and amazing life. And I the funny thing about this is if you do it, it's impossible to fail. You cannot fail if you follow those precepts. But most people want a shortcut, or they want to pretend, or they want to live bigger now than they actually are. If you live true to who you are now, over time, you will get bigger. But if you try to leap ahead of where you actually are, you'll do what you said. You'll build up a fake level of success, and then it'll all come crashing down because you didn't build the foundation necessary to build your life on top of.
And you talk a lot about basically building on assets, not spending money, but and I think you have a quote in there about every $10 earned.
$1, yeah. Every $10 you earn should be $1 a year for the rest of your life. Again, I keep talking about Tony Robbins just because I'm listening to the book Money on my audiobook right now. But he was interviewing Ray Dalio. And if you know Ray Dalio is a massive hedge fund guy. I don't know how much he has under management. I think it's $160 billion or something. But in it, Ray Dalio, I just got to this part where Ray says, ultimately, it's all about cash flow. You want to be in a cash flow, situation where you have positive cash flow from your assets, from your ownership. And he was talking about stocks specifically, or bonds. And I'm like, wow, that's like in a more complex and more sophisticated way. That's what I try to teach people from the get-go is you want to build cash flowing assets. Like if you spend your entire energy building cash flowing assets, ultimately you'll be financially free. Ultimately, you have to live off of cash flow. So for me, that's easy. That's real estate. That's what I do. Other people might do bonds. They might do dividend stocks. But whatever it is, you have to build that cash flow. And when you have cash flow coming in from assets, that is cash flow based living. Asset-based living. And that's where you want to get to in life. And the sooner you figure that out, the better. And it was cool hearing Ray Dalio, who's one of the smartest financial minds in the world, saying it. But it's the same thing Warren Buffett says, right? What does he look for? Companies that have massive cash flow. They spin off huge amount of excess cash. You can apply both those lessons to your personal life and say, how can I build cash flowing assets? The simplest thing is to move every 2 or 3 years, especially when you're starting out, and then keep your starter home as a rental property. That's one very easy way to start building wealth. But ultimately, it will all come down to your cash flow, and you can never fail with cash flowing assets. And so one of the things I've done is just built a massive amount of cash flow. And so even though I don't really have a jet, I have a turboprop, which is close to a jet, but it's a 10-seater, just to be clear and transparent. It's a King Air 300. That King Air was bought way after I could afford it, purely from assets. And so I didn't use my income to buy that plane. I used the excess cash I had from my cash flowing assets, the real estate I own, the real estate franchises I own, the different cash flowing assets that I have. And I probably could afford a far bigger, far faster, far more expensive plane, but I'm really after it for the ease of life, for saving time, like I discussed before. Right. And for really not being treated, I'm not a big fan of the TSA process. I'm sure they're doing it. I don't enjoy it. And so that's why I made the decision to buy this particular plane. And if I bought another one, it would be for speed to go places a little faster. But ultimately, they'll always be bought with cash flow. And And so that's what your number one goal should be, to live off the cash flow from your assets, not live off your income.
And I think that goes back. It's probably a century old adage there, basically invest a portion of your income and don't spend money on frivolous assets. Wealthy people invest their money in appreciating assets, and poor people invest their money in things that depreciate. It's a pretty simple concept.
Yeah, you could read The Rich Man in Babylon, but save money no matter how much you make. And people are always like, "Oh, I can barely make ends meet," but that's BS, man. I made $20,000 when I was 17, living at home cutting lawns, and I felt like I was the richest man in the world. Right? 20,000 wouldn't get me through a week probably today, but maybe it would make maybe 2 weeks. I'm not sure. But the point is that I save money off that 20 grand. The reason we think we can't save money off our income is because we just allow our lifestyle to creep right on along with our income. And in America, sadly, we tend to creep our lifestyle just ahead of our income. And you just got to have the discipline to take that little sliver off the top. In The Richest Man in Babylon, he says 10%, and stick it away. And I was coaching a buddy of mine on this the other day. He goes, "Wow, I've been doing it for a year now. I've got like 5 grand saved up. He makes 50 grand a year. Can I go buy that stereo system?" I'm like, "No, you don't ever get to buy a stereo system. You don't get to buy anything ever with that money. It just has to build, because wealth has a gravity to it. And if you keep adding assets to that wealth, it will start growing. That's why they say it's easier to make the second million than the first million, because once you have that bulk of assets, it creates wealth all by itself. But you never get there if you take that 5 grand, that tiny sapling. You're like, "Here's my tiny little tree, $5,000. Now I'm going to go buy a stereo system." You're back to zero. You may as well never have started. And that's what happens to so many Americans. And it's really sad. We don't teach them this, and there's no way they get exposed to this. And the reason there's so many broke Americans and 50% of people can't survive a bad month is what I heard, or something like that.
Wow.
It's because they don't get this concept. You got to get it deep in your being that's what wealth is. It's assets, and they have to keep growing. You have to keep growing the orchard, if you will. And if you'll do that, even if it's only 1,000 a year to begin with, ultimately you're developing the discipline that will serve you when it's 100,000 a year, or 50,000 a year, or $1 million a year.
Wow. Hey, Dave, we have a couple questions. Would you mind answering some questions from
Sure.
that are viewing?
Be my pleasure.
If anybody has any questions out there, send them in to Jeff in the comments. Jeff's going to forward them to us. But our first one, Cecil, says, if you could change one thing about the way businesses are being built online, what would it be?
Wow, that's a good question, because I don't do that much online. But I would say, again, going back to authenticity, I think a lot of stuff online feels bait and switchy. People feel like they're trying to churn you into something. And I would rather have more transparency and authenticity in everything I'm looking at. The internet's gone from amazing to kind of annoying, because you're getting so much fake information now. You search something, you get 20 fake things that are flooding it, and that's a shame. So yeah, I would go to more authenticity and transparency.
There's a big push, especially in the in all of the magazines, this millennial generation, for entrepreneurship. In your a little bit wiser opinion, is there a difference between building businesses and entrepreneurship? Like, entrepreneurship almost has a bad word now.
Yeah. I mean, I think entrepreneurs are people that are willing to create something and get after it, right? So that's an admirable thing, and I admire that. But that doesn't make a business. A business is a machine, if you will, that creates cash flow. So to build a business requires that you're more of a mechanic. An entrepreneur, I think, to me, means what part I love about it is you step out and you take a risk. You start something, you're living and dying by your wits, which I think is the only way really to live, because then you're truly paid to learn, and you're truly, like, you're living vibrantly based on whether you win or fail, because it makes a massive difference to you personally. But ultimately, I think entrepreneurship is really just that initial step. Then you got to learn to be a leader. You got to learn to be a great business person. The entrepreneur is kind of like the high school-ish, or maybe the freshman year of college. It's not enough to take you all the way to the end zone. So I'd say that's I don't think it should be a bad word. I love entrepreneurs, but it's not enough.
Do you think that I have, and you have kids too, so I have a 12 and a 5-year-old, and there's an ongoing debate in my household about college.
Right.
Do you have that debate, or have you had those thoughts, or in your circles, do you have that debate?
Well, yeah, sure. Jeff Sandifer is the guy that runs the elementary school my kid's at. Whatever it's called, primary school. I got very little out of college. I got a degree. I got barely. And I don't think that college is necessarily necessary. I think it's egregiously expensive. It depends on your personality type. If you're going to be a doctor, if you're going to be a lawyer, if you're going to be, master's degree therapist, there's things where you need that college degree. And I think that's crucial for you. But I think for entrepreneurs, the moms out there get mad at me, maybe the dads too, but you're better off starting off the sooner you can and getting after it, unless you happen to be studious. And if you're studiously inclined, by all means, go for it. College, and the good thing about the 20s, I think your 20s is a time to figure out who you are and what you want to do. So I think it's good to try a lot of different things in your 20s. College is also good for your social circle, for your social life, for becoming a fully grown human, I guess. But ultimately, from an educational point of view, I think every year I learn more in my life today than I learned in 4 or 5 years in college. And I think it's way overpriced. And I think it's ridiculous to have kids coming out of school $100,000 in debt. I think that's sinful, honestly.
Yeah, it's hard to, and I try and crunch numbers on what the ROI is on a college degree, and it's really difficult. Our next question is, and this is a good question, how do you balance building wealth compared to living life? So do you work 80 hours a week and go all in on something? Like, how do you balance the two?
So if your 20s is a time for figuring stuff out, I think, your late 20s, early 30s is a time for grinding it out. So you figure it out, then you grind it out. Yeah, I had my time where I was working 80 hours a week for sure. Probably I did my 20 years worth of work in 10 years, probably from 96 to 2006. There was a lot of work being done. Today, I'm much more balanced. I'm very committed to my family, but I earned the right to do that by the success I've had. So now I work extremely focused. I only work on the most important things. So I try to keep myself on the top stuff. I got an amazing team around me that handles a lot of other stuff. But I think there is a time in life to grind, and you need to get after it. And by the way, I'm more effective now in my 1 hour than I was in 6 hours, in my 20s and 30s. But that's because those 6 hours I was learning what worked and what didn't work. So I was more like a pinball bouncing around in a pinball machine, wasting a lot of energy. And today I know what works, and I know the leverage points, the 3 leverage points you have: systems, capital, and people. And so I'm much better at spending my time only specifically in the parts of the machine that work, the biggest levers, if you will, where you make one pull and it has a big impact. Mm-hmm. But I don't think I'd know all that as well if I hadn't done the 80-hour weeks that I did when I was younger. But, each to their own. Maybe there's someone smarter out there that will get straight to the lever points. Today I choose balance, and the way I choose balance is I think, I talked about my goals. I've got my goals set at all these different areas of life, and these are my goals. They're all color coded. It's family, spiritual, contribution, and I've got like a flight path for my life, and I look at this on a regular basis, at least weekly, but sometimes more, and I can see where I'm on track or off track. I got to have my workouts. I got to look after my body. There's nothing worse, than making $1 bazillion and then dying at age 50 of a massive heart attack, which I've seen. I've learned the lessons from, and so I'm trying to make sure that doesn't happen to me. So balance is something I use my slightly intense nature to bring myself to balance by having a scripted plan for my life.
Hey Dave, this is and we have another question from Eddie, and I think this is my wife and I had a conversation about this because she sees my passion and enthusiasm for certain things. And I hear a lot of people talk about this, like they haven't found their thing. So the question is, where did your passion come from? Like, is it just born? I don't believe it's born within you. I mean, I believe we're all born with.
Yeah, I was a goofy kid. I mean, I think I was like hyperactive. Today they call ADD and all these different words, which, are great. I mean, I agree with them all, but I was just called hyperactive. In our day, everybody, there's just some kids that were hyperactive. So that's the energy piece, but then you got to direct into something. And I think what people do is they quit a little too early sometimes. I think people think it's all going to be easy. It was brutally hard for me at times. There are parts I loved, and then there are parts that are just like a kick in the teeth every day. And then you have to go back with a bloody mouth and let them kick you in the teeth again. And I fortunately had peers and I had mentors and teachers that helped me stay the course. But you can't just expect to change careers every 2 years and that suddenly you're going to find something that every day you wake up and it's like eating ice cream, because it's not like that. It's like going to the gym. You got to work out. You get a little pain. It gets a little intense. And then you'll break through different levels of accomplishment as you advance. But you have to really bear down on stuff and stay with it to get that breakthrough. Now, if you're in the wrong space, by all means, move on. But there's a lot of people that just move on forever. That's all they do. So what I tell people to do is, like, let's say you commit to sales or whatever. think of it like joining the Army, like you enlisted in the Army. Pick a number of years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 2 years, whatever you want it to be, and tell yourself, I just signed up for the 2 years of service or 3 years of service. And for those 2 or 3 years, give it everything you've got, like every single little thing. And the minute you wake up one day and like 12 months in, you're like, oh, I'm so tired. This really sucks. It's really hard. Just remember, you enrolled, you enlisted. You don't get out until you finish, unless they fire you or something, until you finish that 2-year enlistment. And because you can't get out of the Army, you can't be like, oh, I want out. I changed my mind, right? They don't let you out. You've got an enlistment period. And I think that helps people to just understand. You remind yourself of that 12-month window when it's tough. I said I was going to do this for 2 years. Gosh darn it, I'm going to just bury myself into it and try to have a breakthrough. Because every career you're in, no matter what, you're going to reach these ceilings. And the ceilings feel really frustrating. Sometimes it feels like the dark night of the soul, like you're trying everything and it's not working. But usually just on the other side of that, if you keep plugging away, you'll have a breakthrough. And so my encouragement is to find what works for you, but understand whatever works for you is not going to be like Mecca every day. And when you hit those ceilings, just commit to enrolling for a number of years and then grinding through. And then after the 2 years or the 3 years, whatever you committed to, then look back and analyze, was this a good fit for me? What's working? What's not working?
Yeah. I mean, I've been married, this year will be 18 years. And my wife says I say this on every podcast. So maybe I want something subconsciously, but it wasn't always easy. I mean, there's a lot of work in a relationship, just like building a business, just like managing your health. Like, it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
No.
I mean, and that's life.
Yeah, my mom said to me once something very wise. I said, how did you and Dad make it work for 50 years? She goes, we never both fell out of love at the same time. So there were times one didn't love the other, but the other loved enough to hang in there for him. And that's, it's not easy. 50 years of marriage isn't easy. Building businesses isn't easy. Building a massive portfolio of real estate, it's not easy, but you just got to stay the course and keep plugging away at it. And ultimately, you'll get lucky. I mean, Richard Branson said, he goes, I got lucky. I got out of the business into the airline business. But somebody said to me once, you got lucky. And he goes, you have to make luck happen to you. Yes, you have to get lucky, but you have to put yourself in a position where you can get lucky. And if you're choosing to work at that 9-to-5 job you hate, and go to the bar every weekend and watch football and do nothing of the risk nature of your life or nothing entrepreneurial, you'll never put yourself in a position to get lucky. So the way you put yourself in a position to get lucky is by putting it out there. And if you keep putting it out there, eventually you'll get lucky.
Hey, Dave, if you have time, I have 2 more questions and I'll let you run because I know your time is very valuable.
Let's do it.
It was a section in the book talking about living life with no regrets. And I believe that you referenced a book. And I think it was the number one regret or the number one dying person. The number one thing that concerned them was that they wish that they had done something differently. Do you have any regrets?
Yeah. I mean,
or do you? I think the better question is, we all have regrets, but how do you reframe that and learn from that? I mean, there are things that I did, I regretted it, but it's what do I take away from that?
Sure. I think I don't have a lot of regrets. I think I've had an amazing life and, I've been incredibly lucky. I've had amazing adventures. I got great friends. I've made a difference. But I do have a regret. I mean, I have a 29-year-old daughter that I guess I got a girl pregnant very early in my high school, college, early days. And I didn't have a relationship with my daughter until she was 8. Wow. There's a lot of story behind that. I didn't get a blood test. I didn't know for sure she was mine. The girl moved away and married another guy. But at the end of the day, that's 8 years I could never get back with my beautiful older daughter. So, of course, I wish I had that over. But the lesson from that is to make sure I have a great relationship now. And when she came into my life, I built that relationship. Make sure I don't miss the good moments with my kids today. So every regret or kind of error, if you will, can be turned into a possibility and an opportunity. And so I think just like you said, you take anything when you do something wrong, or you feel like you did something wrong, you didn't call back a client, they listed with someone else. That's an easy one. The lesson is call back those clients. That's it. If you take that, then it doesn't really matter what happened. You've already gained from that. And so, the regrets are really the regrets are great. It's like the failures. The failures teach you far more than the successes.
Yeah. And take ownership for them. Like take ownership for, I screwed up. I made a mistake. That's one of my biggest pet peeves is when you blame something on somebody else. Like,
you're 100% responsible for every single thing happening in your life, everything across the board. Now, somebody drives into your car and, you smashes you. You're like, how can I be responsible for that? You're responsible for how you think about it, how you handle it, what you do about it. From that moment that person drove into you, the outcome is determined by your choices. And that's how you have to approach every single aspect of life. You are 100% responsible for everything that happens to you at all times. There's no other way to approach it, because the other alternative is you're completely a victim to what happens in life. So
right.
You have a choice. One of them is an effective methodology for managing things, and one of them is ineffective. It's your choice. One of them you just get to point fingers and blame. One of them you get to take action and make a difference. Your choice.
Yeah, you can't change the wind, but you can change the set of your sails.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
We have, when it comes to fears or risk, I mean, the reason that people don't take risk is typically because they're afraid of something. Are you afraid of anything? Like, what scares you?
I mean, I'm afraid all the time. Fear, courage isn't an absence of fear. Courage is taking action in spite of your fears. So I think, early on in my career, I remember I was afraid to speak in front of people. I was afraid to make cold calls. I was afraid to prospect. All of those fears have receded because I've done so much of them. But recently I pulled together some very high net worth individuals for a mastermind, and my fear was they'd all reject me. I got 7 people in a room with an average net worth of over 100 million based on my invitation only. Wow. And so I invited them in, and I was like, I had this momentary fear, like we all do. Like, what if no one shows up? I'll just be sitting there all by myself. Wow, this would really suck. I invited 9 people, 7 showed up. So, I have a fear that I'm going to screw up my kid every day. I have lots of fears. Yeah, we all have fears. Every single person in the world has fears. And I think that's a misconception people have about successful people versus they're just fearless. I think really it is, you just learn to master your fear. You learn to not necessarily master, that's a strong term. Just recognize it and take action anyway. And recognize the gift of fear. Fear alerts you. It makes you pay attention. It makes you rise up and be super aware. If someone was trying to kill you right now, you'd be like massively aware. Your awareness would be through the roof. If you can approach life every day with a little bit of fear, it's actually kind of good for you. It kind of keeps you aware and awake and paying attention versus falling into sleep like so many people do. So I like fear. I like taking risks. I like doing unusual things, going to strange countries, trying a sport I've never tried before, putting myself out there, because I know that entrepreneurs and business owners do that on a regular basis. So you have to get very comfortable with facing the unknown, seeing that fear, taking action, and then realizing the fear was just a silly thing anyway.
Dave, you're absolutely amazing. And once again, I really appreciate you taking the time out. It speaks volumes about when you talk about authenticity and your just desire to just give back of what you've learned. And I think that's very common of successful people, because someone has given us that gift or of wisdom or knowledge, and we give that back. How do people find your book? Like, what is the best place for them to go and buy a copy of your book?
You can get a copy from Amazon.com. I mean, I think we're still doing a special on the Kindle for 99 cents. They've got the full version, I think, on sale now for $17 or something at Amazon.com. Or you can go to davidosborn.com and find it there. We're not trying to make money off the book. We're just trying to put the word out. It was a long-time goal of mine to be a bestseller. So I think that's mission accomplished. And the whole purpose of the book is to serve people. So yeah, you find it davidosborn.com, Amazon.com, or I think there's already a few used copies out there. So if you want to go get one at about $3 off, you can buy it from a used bookstore around town too.
Or you can, once again, we have a contest. Share this feed, and the other contest we'll put in the comments, and you can win a copy of an autographed copy of a book. And that'd be pretty cool, because I have a collection of books that people have autographed, and that is kind of like one of the things that I'll leave to my kids. I cherish this because each one of those books have had an impact in some way, shape, or form in my life. And each one of those characters are a character in my life.
That's great.
And I love it, and I appreciate you. So
the world is being changed by people like you too, John, for putting this effort out there. I know it's not easy. You're probably not getting $1 million contract, and what you're trying to do is change lives. And that's really, what life's all about, is us growing each other, changing together, and becoming better together. And if everyone chose to do that, we'd have a pretty amazing community, and we'd have a pretty amazing country, and we'd have a pretty amazing world. So this is exactly what you're doing, is what the world needs more of.
Thank you, David. And the same goes to you. When it comes to fulfillment, what does that mean to you? Like, what is fulfillment? Like having a fulfilled life?
Fulfillment to me means getting, being challenged, finding new stuff. I was going to say my old cliche is getting to do what I want with whom I want when I want, but that's really what wealth is, what money does. Fulfillment, I think, is choosing something new and then learning it and getting better at it, or mastering something you already knew, like being a better father. Like just before I came up here, my daughter wanted to challenge me to a tickling contest. That was extremely fun. And I was like, I really didn't want to do it because I was trying to come up and speak to you guys, but I'm like, how can I say no to my 7-year-old? So I got into a tickling contest, and we were both hysterically laughing. And so I think it's in those moments that you make those decisions that your destiny is truly shaped. And fulfillment to me is making the right decisions on a repetitive basis that leads me to more experiences and becoming more of a human being, becoming the best human being that David Osborn could be while I'm on this planet. To me, that's fulfillment. That's
absolutely amazing. David, I know you're busy. Hopefully the kids are asleep. If not, go back to that tickle contest.
Yeah.
Man, I can't wait to hang out with you sometime. You're such a cool guy, and I really appreciate this. If people are watching this or you can't watch it, it'll be on iTunes on Friday. And please share David's book. I mean, it really is, this book right here. Wealthy people share things.
How come mine's backwards?
Now, it's frontwards here. It's just the way that you're looking at it.
Oh, I got you. Okay, good. Well, can't wait. I thought there wasn't this part.
And it says in the book, poor people discuss the things that poor people discuss. This can change generations.
Yeah.
Go out and buy it, guys. David, thanks, bud. Have a great evening. Say hi to the family. This has been awesome.
Best of all. Thanks, brother. Enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.